Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CDA with class. I'm Isabella. I'm here with Teachstone in the marketing department, and we're really excited to get you all together and get into this awesome product with our hosts today. We're going to get the chat started in a minute, and then when that's opened up, just feel free to introduce yourself, where you're from, what program you're with, maybe what your role is in the chat. Just a couple housekeeping items. This is going to be recorded, so we wanted you to be aware of that. We're going to go over the rest of those items in a second, then get into the overview of the CDA with class system, and then talk about how this could benefit your program. And as I said, we are recording today. You will receive an email tomorrow with the slides, the recording, and a few other resources. And then once the chat box is open, feel free to ask any questions there or use the Q&A box to submit questions privately. And we will do our best throughout this presentation to make sure that we have you good to go with all the information you need, all your questions answered. All right. So before we begin, I should introduce our two panelists today, or our hosts. We have Erin Sabina and Megin Rustin, and I'm going to turn it over to them to get started.
All righty. Thank you, Isabella. My name is Erin Sabina. I've been with Teachstone for about actually 7 years tomorrow, I think, is my work anniversary. I am an account executive for the West, so I support our partners in states in the West. And I absolutely love what we do. I'm passionate about the importance of interactions. I worked before in juvenile detention centers. Some of y'all may have heard me talk about that before. And just the importance of really setting these foundations in the lives of kids. And I want to turn it over to Megin Rustin to introduce herself.
Hi, yeah, my name is Megin. I've been with Teachstone since 2018. I actually started as a CDA with class facilitator. Now I support the facilitators who teach those courses. As a manager, I am a huge class cheerleader. I'm also a huge believer in the CDA credential as a workforce solution. I'm here to answer any questions y'all might have.
All right, awesome. So we are going to learn about the benefits of the CDA with class. What is it that really sets this apart from other CDA offerings? As well as we're going to then dive into the actual platform and be able to see what the platform looks like and how easy to use and functional it is, even for those who may not be as comfortable with technology. So first, what is a CDA? Megin, do you want to explain a little bit about what a CDA is and the importance of a CDA credential?
Sure. So the CDA credentials, the CDA stands for Child Development Associate. It's the most widely recognized credential in ECE. And what it is a competency-based credential. So it's a combination of both professional experience and professional education. The credential itself is awarded by the Council for Professional Recognition. What Teachstone does is provide the professional education. We help prepare participants to receive that credential from the council.
Great. And so can you explain that a little bit more? So we do the preparation and we do the portfolio, right? But there's still a little bit of work that folks need to do to actually get their credential.
Yes. So CDA with class provides the number of hours that are required, the 120 hours of professional education that are required by the council. And we also provide some support for building the portfolio, which is also another requirement by the council. Participants have to put together, candidates for the credential have to put together a professional portfolio. Outside of that, participants need to have completed their own number of hours, 480 hours of professional experience in the age group that they want to get their credential in. They also need to take an exam, and there's also a verification visit where they are observed by a professional development specialist from the council, working as lead teacher in the age group they're going to credential in.
Okay, great. So we provide the coursework, and then there's still the additional work that is needed to actually get the credential, but we're helping provide the really great content for the coursework here. If we can go to the next slide. So I want to take a moment and have everyone, if you can put in the chat, think a little bit about when you're thinking about what you're looking for in a CDA preparation program, what challenges are you facing? What challenges have you faced with whatever CDA program you might be using currently? What are some things that are kind of barriers to the CDA prep programs that you might be using, challenges that your educators, that the learners who are going through the coursework experience? Could be challenges that if you're an administrator, that you as an administrator experience while supporting folks as they're going through the CDA with class. Preparing the portfolio, no help for teachers, fitting it into your work schedule. Difficult to find 10 hours in each area. So I'm seeing difficulty with timing, difficulty with support along the way, time management. Okay. Unprepared for the level of difficulty of the coursework. Time management, extra hours. Okay, time and cost. So a lot of these involve the time that it takes to do the coursework, finding the extra time, especially I can imagine as an educator, finding time to commit, to be able to find, to be available at 7 p.m. every Tuesday for a class or whatever that might be. Okay, so if we can go, we're going to touch on a lot of these points as we go through the next couple slides here. So with our CDA with class, you have the flexibility to complete the coursework from any device on your own schedule. So we saw time was a big challenge. And that's something that we were really intentional and thoughtful about when developing the CDA with class. The lessons are really short, bite-sized chunks. So you can kind of start and stop and be able to do some coursework in small chunks of time. You don't need to be able to commit to 2 hours at a time or anything like that as you're working through it. You can also, as it says, complete from any device. So you can be doing this on your cell phone as you're in the doctor's waiting room. You can be on your tablet. You can be on your laptop. And you can pause from one device and pick up right where you left off on the next device. Megan, is there anything that you want to add to that about feedback that you've heard from participants?
I think the flexibility, the mobile device is really key. So like you were saying, that provides so much flexibility. You can do it, if you're on a lunch break, you can do it in the pickup or drop off line. It really lends itself to fitting into your schedule and your routine, as opposed to having a dedicated time every week that you have to attend.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as far as what the different offerings that we have are. But I mentioned the 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. There's not that sort of schedule that you need to stick to with our CDA with class. You don't have to show up at specific times, even for the facilitated version. So we'll get into that a little bit. If we can go to the next slide here. I also saw some comments about the difficulty of the coursework. Oftentimes I see comments when I've done this webinar, when I've talked to folks about also just the engaging content, whether it's engaging or not, and that there are some courses that are a little bit more tedious, that are just kind of reading from a book, that sort of thing. So we wanted to make sure that we still have that engaging content that Teachstone is known for, with class videos, with real classroom footage, and be able to break it down in a way that's really engaging the learner, multiple modalities of learning, and you'll see this in the demo, and really help, especially for folks who maybe haven't been on the receiving end of learning in a while. How can we help make this an easy, engaging experience? So Megin, again, what type of feedback have you heard from participants about the content and the difficulty of the coursework?
Yeah, and I know you mentioned we'll dive into this a little bit deeper later on, but the CDA with class courses are not just click, click, click. There are videos. We get a lot of feedback about having videos of actual classroom interactions that are really helpful. Engagement with the facilitators is also a huge help for our learners.
Great. So we do have multiple options of offerings here. So some folks really want that additional support of a facilitator, of a more structured kind of course pathway to work through. And so for that, we have a facilitated CDA with class. Other folks want to be able to pick up and go, start right away, maybe have a longer time to be able to work through the coursework. Or actually, a lot in my experience, I hear folks wanting a shorter time because they need to have their CDA in hand within a certain time frame of being hired. So our on-demand CDA with class is going to provide that additional flexibility. So we'll dive into these again in the demo, but basically the on-demand CDA, we'll talk a little bit about, they're going to have a year access to complete this coursework. So you can start as soon as you register, have a year access, and it's more asynchronous through the entirety of the program. Whereas the facilitated CDA, it's the same great content that they're getting in the on-demand CDA with class, but this is going to be a more structured experience. So there's going to be 3 courses of 8 weeks each. And during those courses, there's a specific start and end time. There's still that flexibility, right? For if there's a vacation that somebody goes on, or if somebody's working a little bit faster, a little bit slower, but being able to complete within those 8 weeks. And there's additional supports that they get during that time as well. So there's the asynchronous portion, but there's also, it's a cohort of learners. So there's the specific, as I mentioned, the specific start time. So they can't just pick up and start today as they can with on demand, because they're going to wait for this group of learners to all begin together. With the facilitated, we have options to earn your CEU or to get college credit. And the college credit version, again, is the same great content, just with a little bit more material added. Some really great podcasts. I think, Megin, you've done some of those podcasts. Is that right?
Yes, I've done a couple.
Great. And so can you tell me a little bit about the difference between these offerings here and what learners might experience?
Yeah, so like Erin was saying, the on-demand courses are completely unfacilitated and asynchronous. So you do have that 1-year timeline to finish. The content, the core content is the same as the facilitated, but the facilitated with CEU has a little bit more, there's a few more assignments or activities because it is facilitated. So there's an actual person on the other end. And then more so for the college credit. The on-demand still meets the 120-hour criteria by the council, and it still meets the minimum of 10 hours for each subject area. I know I saw one of the comments in the chat that some challenges were meeting that 10-hour mark. All of these offerings at least meet that 10-hour minimum. Usually go a little bit, you get a little bit more than just 10 hours per subject area, but In the facilitated CDA with class, there are set start dates and there are set end dates for each course. So the CDA program facilitated is a set of 3 courses. Each one is 8 weeks, but within those 8 weeks, you are welcome to work at your own speed, as long as ideally you finish by the end of those 8 weeks. Learners are all provided with a pacing guide, though, that they're encouraged to follow. So you have that guidance the entire time. And you also have a facilitator to reach out to if you have questions about assignments or questions about your portfolio. There's an actual person on the other end there to answer those questions.
I love the amount of support that we provide for CDA, because not only is there direct access to facilitators, there's a CDA support email that folks can use, and our standard customer support team is available. So I know feedback I've also heard from programs who have worked with other CDA programs has been difficulty with reaching their CDA contact folks. And so I have not heard the same thing once folks have engaged with our CDA. I know a couple questions have come in that I want to take a look at. One of them is, if my staff does the on-demand CDA, can it be set up to complete in a shorter amount of time? Rather than 1 year, can it be set up to complete within 16 weeks? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That is one of the use cases I've seen for folks using on-demand over facilitated, is to be able to have that shorter time frame to finish their CDA coursework. The coursework itself, you're still going to have a year access from Teachstone. So it would be set up for a year through Teachstone. Megan, I know I've worked with CDA facilitators before to create kind of custom pacing guides in these scenarios. Have you worked with programs with that sort of ask as well?
Yeah, so that 1 year, that's just how long they have access to complete the coursework. They can finish it. Like I said, it is completely asynchronous. It is completely open. You can actually sort of bounce around between courses. If you want to work on admin in early childhood today, but tomorrow you feel like working on health and safety, you can absolutely do that. And yes, we have provided, there already exists a 12-month pacing guide. So even on-demand learners are also provided with a pacing guide. And we've also created a 6-month pacing guide. So it really, again, just sort of reflects that flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I saw a question come into the chat that I want to clarify a little bit. So the question was, are they differentiated between infant, toddler, and preschool? And the answer is yes, and the answer is no. So it's yes, in that you can choose between infant, toddler, and pre-K. What you're choosing when you choose between infant, toddler, and pre-K is the book that the participant receives. Our CDA is actually birth to 5, which is one of the other really great aspects of our CDA, is that the same 120 clock hours can be applied when you're doing the process with the council for your infant toddler credential and for your pre-K credential. So you don't need 240 clock hours if you need both credentials. You can actually use the same coursework for both. But yes, you can choose between infant, toddler, and pre-K to get that book. Now, that is a little bit different, I believe, with our CDA renewal with class. Is that correct, Megan?
So now the renewal is actually, we have a new renewal offering, Child, Family, and Community. That is the renewal course. So it also is sort of age neutral. It can work if you are renewing an infant toddler credential, or if you need to renew your preschool credential, or if you're renewing a family childcare credential. It can still count towards any of those 3.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And so we do have as well a CDA renewal with class. That one of the things, so we've been redoing the CDA renewal every 3 years so that when you're due for your renewal, because you do need to renew your CDA credential with the council every 3 years, you can come back to us and know that it's new content every 3 years. So you can just continue coming back for your CDA coursework. Okay, and Isabella, were there any additional questions that you want us to address right now, or are some of them for holding off as we'll address them as we go?
We had one just come in. I don't think you answered it yet. If they don't complete within a year, can they extend or do they have to re-register?
Yes, ideally they're completing within a year. But we can, and Megan, I don't know if you want to speak to this a little bit more, but we can extend a little bit. We don't want to require people to pay for a new course or to not pass, etc. Megan, I don't know if you want to add anything with that.
Yeah, so for the on-demand and the facilitated versions of the course, yes, ideally, folks are finishing within that time frame in order to stay on that, on their own timeline, right? On their own CDA trajectory timeline. But yes, if you don't finish, we also understand life happens, right? And you have things happening outside of your CDA coursework. So if you do not finish by that deadline, you can actually reach out directly to our enrollment team and they will work with you on getting you more time to finish your coursework.
And then I'm also seeing a number of questions coming in about cost. We have a slide dedicated to that later on in the presentation. So we'll go over that and how people pay for their CDA when we get to that point.
Great. And one other question I did see come in that I wanted to address real quick. Oh, where did it go? Oh, do you have to have a high school diploma to enroll? Because that's a great question that I do hear a lot. We mentioned at the beginning the difference between what Teachstone provides and what's needed when applying through the council. So a high school diploma or GED is needed when pursuing the actual credential through the council. It is not needed to enroll in our CDA coursework. So you can be obtaining your GED while simultaneously going through this the CDA coursework, etc. But when actually submitting your application to the council, you would need a diploma or GED at that point. Is that correct, Megan?
Right. You don't have to have a high school diploma or GED to take our CDA with class courses. When it comes time to actually apply for your credential, yes, the council requires a high school diploma or GED.
Great. Okay. And so we've gone over a lot of the great things that differentiate our CDA with class from other CDA offerings. The additional aspect here is, as I just said, it's CDA with class. So we are the only CDA coursework where you're learning the foundational class concepts and strategies at the same time as getting this professional education to earn or renew your CDA credential. So it's kind of twofold there. One, we know that class is best practices. So you're embedding that right into their learning, but also if class is mandated in your program, whether you're a Head Start, whether your state mandates it, etc. It's the phrase that I have switched to for the more positive phrasing here is feeding two birds with one cracker. So instead of needing to silo the information and viewing class as separate from best practices, or needing to have an introduction to class training and also CDA coursework, you can get all of that together. You're sort of getting like a class 101 during your CDA credential coursework here. Megan, anything you want to add to that one?
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head on that one. If your center or your program uses class in its CQI process, you're introducing your teachers to the class language and the class concepts from the get-go.
And this is a total side note, but there's a chat that says my daughter says feeding two birds with one scone. And I might take that because that rhymes better with the original. That works better instead of the two birds with one cracker. I think I'm going to start using that one. So Virginia, when you start hearing me say that on webinars from now on, you'll know that it came from you. Thank you. Okay. So CDA renewal with class. Megan, I know we talked about this a little bit already. So we get the new course content every 3 years. There's still a flexible schedule. It's for CEUs. What else do you want to mention about our CDA renewal?
Yeah, and we touched on this earlier. It is new content. Right now, we actually just launched Child, Family, and Community February of last year. So it is still brand new content. But yes, when you renew, you need to renew your CDA every 3 years, and you have to take new content. You can't just keep taking the same CDA course every 3 years. And when you renew, it doesn't necessarily have to say CDA renewal. It doesn't necessarily have to say that in the name of the course. But yes, right now, our new course for renewal is Child, Family, and Community, and it meets that 4.5 CEU requirement by the council.
Now, if an educator this is coming from one of the questions in the chat here. If an educator already has a CDA, can they renew their CDA with Teachstone, or do they have to have been through Teachstone's initial CDA coursework?
No, you can still if you would like to take CDA renewal with class, but you didn't get your initial CDA with Teachstone, that's okay.
Yep.
That's more than okay.
Absolutely. The content is for whoever is pursuing their CDA, or I've actually had some folks who used it was interesting. They used our CDA with class for college credit as supervisors who didn't need a CDA credential. So they weren't going to be going for the credential. They needed the early childhood college credit hours, which I thought was also a very interesting way to use our coursework.
Yes, I've heard similar stories for folks maybe out in California who need college credits in ECE specifically, even though they aren't necessarily going on to get their CDA credential.
Yep. I think this one might have been Texas. I don't recall what state it was, but yeah. Okay, so I know the next slide is us jumping into the demo. Are there any questions, Isabella, that you want us to address before we get into the demo? Or as always, you can stop me along the way as we're demoing if there are questions that are pertinent to what we're doing.
Yeah, so we have a question about on-demand learners. Do on-demand learners have some access to the facilitators?
Megan, I'll leave that one for you.
Yeah, the on-demand version of CDA with class is completely unfacilitated. So it's you're writing solo in CDA with class on demand. However, you can reach out to, we have an amazing customer support team that you can still reach out to or chat with if you have questions. And yeah, it's completely unfacilitated.
And then we have some questions about international students and somebody from Mexico City looking for an in-depth early childhood program and whether this would be a good choice for them. And they said that they do have a bachelor's and master's degree.
I'm not familiar with international needs regarding CDA. Are you, Megan?
Well, so I would probably follow up with the question, what type of program I would maybe ask, like, say, tell me more about what it is you're looking for. So if you're looking for an in-depth early childhood education, courses, the courses that we offer for the facilitated version are, the first course is basically like an intro to child development course. Course 2 is health and safety. And then course 3 is all about, it's fundamentals of teaching in the ECE classroom. So sort of similar to maybe like a curriculum course. And then we have the renewal child, family, community. So I think if you're curious about I know this person said they got their degrees in another country. So I would probably follow up with what's maybe transferable or what your center is, how they will work with you.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a more individual type conversation. And so we will be providing contact information for you to reach out and connect with somebody and be able to have a more in-depth conversation with you.
And then before we move on, and we can save some for the end, does the facilitator check over the portfolio resources and competency statements?
That is a really great question. So while we provide support along the way in helping you kind of create those competency statements, the facilitators don't ever view your portfolio. The PD specialist at your verification visit will review the portfolio and provide any feedback or guidance on that at that point. But you don't, the learners don't ever like turn in a portfolio.
And then I think we'll leave the rest for the end, or towards the end, when we can move on to the demo and see if we answer some of those questions then.
Okay, sounds good. So let me share my screen here. And so are you now seeing client dashboard? All right, great. So I am in a demo environment right now. So you're going to see a whole lot of extra stuff that you don't need to worry about because I have like every course that Teachstone has on this dashboard. But as a learner, what you would do is once you've registered and you've had it added to your course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off showing our on-demand coursework. I am going to also show our facilitated, but I'm going to start off with on-demand. So if I come into my learning hub here, so they may have additional, and this is going to take a moment, they may have additional courses if they've also been through our primer course, for example. But you see, I have all these CDA classes here. So I'm going to start with, I'll jump into CDA with class, for example. And so this is going to show some of the coursework and content that you would have while going through the on-demand coursework. You can see what we mentioned earlier where there's all these little bite-sized kind of learning options. So you can click in and do structure versus process, nurturing positive relationships, etc. And each one is going to be a bite-sized chunk of learning. So I'll come into structure versus process. And I'll come back to the overview here. So each of these sections is going to be set up in a similar way. You're going to have the start, the learn, and the check over here. The start is going to have the overview. It's going to tell you what you're looking for and level set with some vocabulary to make sure that everyone's on the same page with what some of the vocabulary being used in this lesson is, what it means with respect to what we're learning here. Frame your thinking. A reflective journal is not mandatory, but it is definitely highly recommended and encouraged to be able to do some of these reflective activities as the learner is working through the coursework and be able to reflect back on their journey too, as far as what they're learning as they're going through and any adjustments that it might have to mindsets or to goal planning or anything of that nature. Megan, is there anything you want to add about? And feel free to interrupt me at any point, Megan.
I would never dream of interrupting you, Erin.
Oh, please do.
I would just add that these reflective journal activities are actually really great in preparing learners for writing their professional philosophy statement, which comes a little bit later on in the courses, but that is a professional philosophy is something that you will have to draft for your portfolio and for the CDA credential. And these reflective prompts are really great practice for that philosophy statement.
Great, thank you. And also, while I'm on this page, just to show you, chat with support is right here. So even in the on-demand, so you don't have a facilitator, but you still have our Teachstone support team right at the ready, right there with chat. Okay, required reading. So this would be any sort of downloadable required reading. So here's a PDF here that they would go through. And then there's the lesson. And so there's video. One of the things I really love, I have learned as I've gotten older that I really, really like watching video with closed caption. And so not only is there closed caption, but there's a transcript so that you can read while you're listening. So you have those multiple modalities for however you learn best. There's bolded words, which I love. Draw your attention to certain aspects. Imagery. Key points. So we're summarizing everything for you. There's an activity. And so you see here, I did 7 out of 9 cards correct. I've done this a couple times. I normally just kind of pick random answers here. So you can see I can redo this, the quiz as well. So we're going to be saying is scaffolding structure or process? I'm going to say process. Physical materials, structure, or process? I'm going to say process again and see, it told me I was wrong. It shook it, told me it was wrong. So now I know, okay, physical materials are structure. Let's see, structure. All right. So it's telling me if I'm getting these right or wrong. I'm going to again, oh, got that one wrong. Let me know that. So now I know this is process. And this is just an activity as we're going through, here. Again, I could replay that if I wanted. Then we'll have another little piece of learning, and then there's an actual quiz. So now the quiz is scored. It says strive to score an 80%. This is not a mandatory, you have to have 80% to move on. It is ideal that you have an 80%. So you do have the 3 attempts. Highest score will be recorded as you go through the quiz as well. If I answer something incorrectly, so I'm going to select all that apply. I'm just going to select all, submit. And it tells me not only that this is an incorrect answer, but it also tells me why it's an incorrect answer. So I really appreciate that because you're getting that immediate feedback on what the correct answer was and why that is the correct answer. Okay. Megan, anything you want to add about the quiz or anything within this lesson?
Yeah, I would just add within that feedback. So if you get one of the questions wrong, not only do you get that feedback, but the correct answer is usually given within that feedback. So you do get multiple, you can retake the quiz, right? You have 3 chances to take the quiz if you didn't pass, but you are given that feedback right away.
Okay. And so that is incorrect. Let me just see if I don't know what this one's going to be. I'm going to read too much here. Give me the answer to the next one, Megan. Let's see. Structural quality. Following classroom features, structural quality.
Room arrangement, materials, lesson plans.
Not teaching standards, right?
Teaching standards would,
Oh,
yeah.
teaching standards was also one. Okay. So I would have needed that one correct. Okay. Support development and learning. Process quality.
Support, yes.
Yeah, I got it right. Woo! So I wanted to show that also when you get it correct, you also get the feedback on why that is the correct answer here. And I got striving for 80%. I got 20%. Woo! So I could retake that. And I now have that feedback to know what the answers were, why they were what they were, and I can now retake that quiz. And then once I've retaken the quiz, I'm done with this section. And I could move on to the next section. I can also come back here and you can see once you complete some of these broader sections, there's an assessment. Now for the assessment, Megan, you do need to have a specific score in order to move along. Is that correct?
Right now for the quizzes, and the longer summative assessments, you're given 3 chances to pass. The score you get, even if you don't right now, even if you don't pass those quizzes, yeah, you are still able to progress. You can still move on to the next lesson. It doesn't stop you from finishing the course. That is also true with the assessment. You're given 3 chances. If you don't pass, you know, your highest score is the only one that gets saved. But even if you don't pass the assessment, you can still move on. It doesn't prevent you from finishing.
Gotcha. Okay. And one of the differences, whoa, what is going on here? I have no idea what just happened here. Okay. Whew. So the give me one moment. So one of the differences with the assessments, though, is that you get the answer at the end. You don't get the answer as you're going along with it. Is that correct? You don't get the immediate feedback. You get the feedback once you've completed the full assessment.
No, there's question level feedback for the assessments.
But once you've completed the full assessment or after each question?
No, after each question.
Oh, really? That's been a change since when I was looking at it last. All right, let me see. Let's go back to, so that's for one of the CDA on demand here. So you can see I have a variety of the on demand options here. So if I was done working with that section, as Megan had mentioned earlier, I can bounce around a little bit with the on demand version. So I could jump to this section now if I now want to be working with safety and health, go through these different sections. And now if I want to show, I want to come in and look at one of the facilitated ones. No, this is still on demand. Megan, help me get back to, oh, here we
So
go.
that's a CEU facilitated. Yep.
There we go. All right. So it's going to be the same content. This now is going to be scaffolded. So it's not going to be where you can jump around to in the same way that you can with on demand. You see here, we have a pacing guide. And this helps, as I mentioned, if someone's going on a vacation, if they want to be able to work ahead a little bit, if they want to if they need to delay a little bit, et cetera, to know, am I on target? Am I ahead of time? Do I need to catch up a little bit? What does that look like? Syllabus, and then the modules. So you see here, again, we have sort of the pacing listed out here with the different weeks embedded right into the material. Isabella, are there any questions right now?
I think none that relate to this exactly. Feel free to move on, then we can handle them at the end.
Okay. I saw you pop back on, so I didn't know if there was a question. Okay. So here you see too, that there's the portfolio assignments. So with the on demand, the portfolio is its own section. Here, the portfolio is kind of built in. And there's also, we didn't see discussions in on demand. Megan, can you tell me a little bit about what the discussions are?
Yeah, so in the facilitated versions of CDA with class, there are opportunities for you to interact with your peers and your colleagues. Whereas in the on-demand, it really is kind of a solo experience. So in the discussions, in the facilitated version, you are given a prompt and you are asked to respond, one, to the original prompt, but also respond to at least one of your peers in the discussion. So you can see here, there's definitely some really great, meaningful conversation going on and interaction between learners.
And I could just reply right here. And with the reply, we do want something a little bit more substantive than just I agree, right? We want, I agree when I've done the same thing, X, Y, Z has happened, and really engaging in a dialogue.
Yes, and you do receive points. These are also graded by an actual facilitator, the discussions and the podcast reflections over in the college credit version. And the facilitator will also engage in these discussions. So you're interacting with your peers, but also the facilitator. So if you were to, let's say maybe you're really pressed for time and you put something like, oh, that's a great idea. Your facilitator will probably respond and say, can you tell me more? What did you think was a great idea? So they will definitely coach a little bit more out of you.
Okay, great. And what about the assignments here?
Yes, so the facilitated courses also have written assignments where you are given, you're given a prompt, and they range from 2 to 4 paragraphs. And usually you are asked, whatever whatever the focus of the module was. So for example, module 2, the focus is theories of development and social emotional development. So the assignment pertains to that topic and usually has some kind of class element embedded in it as well.
Great. All right. And so I'm gonna jump in real quick to where am I going to find the college ones? Remind me, I haven't been in one of the college ones in a minute.
Those will begin with ECE, CDA.
Oh, there we go.
There
Okay,
you
so
go.
now this is going to look very, very similar to what we just saw with the facilitated CEU coursework. Let me move this chat out of my way. So if I come back into the module view, it's going to look very, very similar. What am I going to see here that's different than in the facilitated for CEU?
Yeah, so the college credit facilitated version of the course has a little bit more rigor than the CEU facilitated. There are assignments for each module, whereas in the CEU version, there's an assignment every other module. So every other week in the CEU version, you're submitting an assignment. In the college credit version, you'll be submitting an assignment every week. The prompts are the same and still range from 2 to 4 paragraphs. The CEU version has a discussion every week where you engage with your peers. The college credit version has a discussion every week, plus a podcast. And you can see here, there are 2 options. You can choose one. You don't have to listen to both of them. You can select one or the other, and you choose one to respond to in the podcast reflection. And there, it's another opportunity to engage with your peers. So you are also given sort of some questions, some guiding questions to sort of help get the conversation going or help, get you thinking. But those are the big differences. There's podcasts and more opportunities to engage with your colleagues. And there's an assignment every week versus every other week.
Okay, great. And so just want to show, as I'm kind of scrolling down, that you see here, gross motor skills, infant and toddler, gross motor skills, pre-K, fine motor skills, infant and toddler, fine motor skills, pre-K. So again, you're getting the birth to 5 content. And so you're able to get that birth to 5 certificate to be able to apply for an infant toddler and or a pre-K credential. I also there was a question about whether a CDA can be used to get your associate degree. This facilitated for college credit would be that pathway to do so. So you would go through our facilitated for college credit, get 9 ECE credits that are transferable to then be your pathway towards your associate's degree. Megan, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I would just add, so yes, if you want to get your CDA and then ultimately move on to an associate's degree, which PS often is how the CDA goes. Usually folks who get a CDA, that's just their launch point to getting further ECE education. But if that's the pathway you're interested in, this would be the way to go, is to take the college credit CDA with class. And then I don't know if you'll speak to this at all, Erin, but our academic partner, Waldorf, also offers an associate's degree in ECE. So you could very seamlessly move from CDA with class into their associate's program.
Okay, great. And I saw a question about if the textbook readings come from the Essentials book. So I just popped this open real quick to show you. Megan, I don't know if you want to answer it in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, so the required textbook readings actually come from the competency book that you are provided with. The Essentials textbook is optional. That's not a required text. It's highly recommended, but it is optional. So the required readings come from the competency book, but the it'll say in parentheses there if the others are optional.
Right. All right, Isabella, what questions do we have or areas that we should go back over while we have this open?
Yeah, for sure. So we've had a handful of questions come in. Somebody's asking what the difference is between a CDA and a CD associate degree.
So I can touch on this, but Megan, if you want to dive in a little bit deeper, but the CDA is more of a credential. And so it's kind of before you get an associate's or bachelor's. If you're going in that pathway, you don't have to have college credits. I don't know how to explain that in a better way, Megan. Can you?
Yeah. So the terminology can be a little bit confusing. So I appreciate this question. So the CDA credential does stand for Child Development Associate Credential, which is a combination of both education and professional experience in the classroom. Whereas, let's say you're getting a Child Development Associate's degree, that is awarded by a college or university, as opposed to the credential that is awarded by the Council for Professional Recognition.
I would say it's almost like going to college to become a teacher and then getting your teaching certificate so you can actually teach. There's the degree and then the certificate. This one, you don't need the degree to get the certificate. And with this particular course, it can even help you get the degree. So.
Right. So yeah, there's the CDA credential, and then there's the associate's degree.
So we have another kind of about the book again. So if you complete for birth through 5, you can differentiate between infant and toddler or preschool. And will you receive the book for that choice? Can you receive both books to complete the full CDA?
So you would receive the book for the age level that you selected. Usually we then direct you to the council to purchase the book for the other age level. Megan, do we have any other options for that? Or is that still the case that you have to go to the council for the other book?
Yes. So when you register for CDA with class, when you register, you select the age group. And upon enrollment, upon registration, that book is sent to you. If you wanted to get an additional book, you can go onto the council's website and purchase it directly from them.
Will the CDA credential be accepted by districts who require teaching credentials? So this might go back to that degree credential, the question.
Yeah, I think that's more of a individual use case, because I know some areas are a little bit different with that. But I want to just kind of go over this slide so that we can I know there's only a couple minutes left, and we want to be able to get to all of the pricing questions that have come in. So this slide, what this is showing is kind of the way that we went about the demo is that you have the on-demand option, which provides the class concepts. It gets you the competency standard book. You get guidance for your portfolio, and you have the 120 hours of rich content and real classroom videos. If you want to go a layer deeper, We have our CDA with class facilitated for CEUs, which also provides the feedback from expert facilitators. You also have those discussion boards and the cohort to be able to connect with other learners. Another layer deeper is the CDA with class facilitated for college credit, where you're then adding in, as Megan mentioned, the rich podcast episodes, the additional learning experiences, and having the transferable college credits to either continue through Waldorf University's Early Childhood Associates program or transfer those college credits to a college of your choice.
And could you just clarify with that? So for the college credit, are those courses still on demand? You just have to complete it within the 24 weeks with the guidance, or are there time sessions that you have to go to?
It's still the asynchronous where it's set up the same way as the regular facilitated, where there's the 8-week time frame, but you're going through the coursework at your own pace. There's still not that 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night that you have to be available for.
Well, thank you.
Okay, if we want to, so regardless of the program, so you're getting that engaging content that we discussed, you're getting access to the Teachstone support team. So you may have a facilitator if you're doing the facilitated version, but the on-demand, you still have our support team. We're not leaving you high and dry. You still have people who are here to support you through the process. You're also getting not only the competency standards book, but we didn't mention this, you also get access to the class learning community. So a way to connect with other class learners in your area, in the country, around the world, and discuss how others are using the class tool and not need to reinvent the wheel there. So pricing, the question everyone's been waiting for. You see the pricing here on the screen. So we have right now is on demand, provides you with the CEUs. The on-demand version is $329 per learner. The facilitated version for CEUs is $549 per learner. Facilitated for college credit is $1,229, and then the renewal is $215. One thing to know is that if you do have a group that you want to go through, I highly recommend you connect with Teachstone to be able to get a product key so that you don't need to register each individual and pay for each individual separately. You can get a product key to give to folks. So definitely connect with your sales rep so that we can help you out with that. Do we have any questions on?
On the note of pricing, sorry, I'm reading the 2 questions at once here. Is the CDA with class covered by the Teach Scholarship? Can you speak to any scholarship options for users?
So I know that I've worked with programs that have used the Teach Scholarship. I usually, you need to work with them. Like, we don't take the scholarship directly. You would still have us pay for it, and then you would pay us for the coursework. And then I don't know, Megan, do they submit for reimbursement, or do you know how that works?
I'm not terribly familiar with the Teach Scholarship. What I can just echo what you're saying is that we currently do not accept Teach Scholarship in order to pay for CDA. But yes, what you're describing is my understanding of it, is that the Teach Scholarship kind of is another route, but then ultimately that organization or that participant is directly paying Teachstone.
Okay,
And
great.
Megan mentioned in the chat, definitely connect with your program to chat with Teachstone about how you can work out that payment process, because it's possible that it wouldn't happen on Teachstone's end, but it would happen on your program's end where you have dollars to support that. We are at, I think, time.
One thing I want to mention right here real quick is we do anticipate these prices may see an increase in the spring. So this would be a great time to lock in any pricing. You can pre-purchase as well. So you can buy in bulk and have that product key to use moving forward.
Is there a bulk discount?
There's not, we do occasionally do kind of bundles for like for fall, back to school, that sort of thing. There's not a bulk discount, but you'd be locking in with the current price if you buy in bulk. And then also you just have those to give to folks as they get onboarded. It helps alleviate needing to get a PO or a credit card or what have you for each individual and needing to go through the purchasing process for each individual. You can go through a whole bunch of individuals at one time.
All right, cool. And then how long was the class or CDA with class available on demand? Can you remind us?
1 year.
Cool. And then I think that's it. Just remember, again, we want to reiterate prices probably will be going up in the spring. So if you're considering doing it, no time like the present to get started. And we have a link going to be in the chat here in a second that we will also send out tomorrow with the recording of this demonstration to help get in touch with us. So if you have any other questions or if you're ready to get started, please reach out. We're happy to help. And all of this, again, will come to you tomorrow via an email.
And the
So-
bulk purchase lasts indefinitely. There's no expiration until you activate the product key. So you can repurchase a bunch in advance. I saw that question come in. Thank y'all for joining us.
Well, thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Isabella.